What's going on, guys? Welcome to another video. Let's go over my transcript, my full mechanical engineering journey, and I will tell you everything about it, every single class, every single elective. And if you don't know anything about me, my name is Alex Cedar, by the way. Thank you for being here. And I'm a mechanical engineer. I've been on the field for approximately 10 years, and my mechanical engineering journey actually started at a community college. I started at community college, then I went to general engineering, which is my degree that I graduated with, and then I transferred to Virginia Tech to finish up my third and fourth year. It took me approximately 4.5 years from beginning until end, and so this is going to be my Virginia Tech transcript. I'm not going to have a bunch of grades for the first couple of years, because when you transfer from a community college to a 4-year university, what happens is all the grades from the community college basically go away, and they just show up as a T, as a transfer grade, as you can see here on the screen right now. So as you can tell here, these are all the classes that I took. I don't think they even separated it by semesters, but I can tell you a lot of the classes. So this is chemistry, general chemistry. I don't even remember what grade I got. I think I got a B or an A for general chemistry. You got a general chemistry lab. You also got communication. I don't even know what this was, to be honest. So here's computer science, and then we got economics. I took macro and microeconomics. I think I got an A on both. I must say that microeconomics, which is it's more detailed and it's a little more difficult than macroeconomics. And then here we have engineering. This is my first engineering class, a 2-credit class, which was the intro. So then we have English, and we have both English writing and English reading. And then we also have, here's where the hard classes for engineering actually start taking place. This is engineering solid mechanics, ESM, and that is statics. A lot of you guys have already taken a statics perhaps, and if not, it's a very, very difficult class, one of the many difficult classes. And this was actually the one, or one of the ones that kicked off my engineering journey, statics. And then after statics, I took actually dynamics, which is also a very, very difficult class. It really kicked my ass, and dynamics is a class that I barely passed. I needed 210 points to pass the class. I got 208 points by the end of the semester, and with a little bit of a curve, I actually ended up passing the class with a C, barely, just like scraping the floor. And then we have also deformable bodies. Deformable bodies was kind of a more in-depth, it was a deeper version or more complex version compared to statics. That's the way I saw it anyways. That's when you start talking about stresses for the first time, moments, and all this crazy stuff. Actually, it's probably statics. Anyway, and then, of course, all the electives that we have: history, intro to European civilization, history, and then a bunch of other electives. And here is an ISE, Industrial Systems Engineering class. I took engineering economics, economy, and it's an engineering economy. If you've ever taken it, it's basically just basic economics, and it starts talking about projects and cash flow and investments and rate of returns. And personally, after 10 years in the mechanical engineering industry, I've used these concepts actually a lot. And I didn't know at the time how useful they could be, but yeah, if you're working with long-term projects and you're dealing with a lot of money, yeah, you do deal with a lot of cash flows, positives, negatives, your capital investments, and things like that. The other thing, of course, here we have the math classes, and then we have linear algebra. That was a really rough class, but I was lucky that my professor was he was almost like too nice. I mean, it was a difficult class, but his English wasn't that great, so which made it really difficult to understand the class. And I think also it limited the level of explanation that the professor could provide in class, at least. But he was a very nice guy, which I ended up getting an A in the class, but that was one of the major obstacles that I had to deal with the professor from linear algebra, I remember. And then, of course, we have the calculus classes, math. I've been doing some reflections on why calculus 1 was very difficult for me. And the reason I think it was very difficult, it was not only one, because of course there were different concepts than before. It was the first time I was dealing with curves and limits and derivatives and all stuff like that. But also because at that point I was still learning English. I was taking ESL classes, and they're not part of the curriculum here, but a lot of the technical terms that you use in calculus, I didn't even know what a slope was, to be honest. When the professor started talking about slopes and rise over run, I was like, what is he talking about? I was so confused. And I think that's actually what made it a little bit more difficult, at least in the beginning, up until I got used to it, which the second half of calculus 1, I started getting a lot better. I ended up getting a B. But yeah, so I think that's one of the reasons why calculus 1 was very, very challenging and almost made me drop out of engineering. Okay, so that was basically calculus 1. And now with respect to calculus 2, that was actually a little bit, it was still difficult, perhaps a little bit more difficult when it comes to technical terms, but it didn't feel as hard for me because I already got used to the language and the technical terms that were being used in math. And then vector geometry, I don't even remember that class, to be honest. I mean, obviously you talk about vectors, but I don't remember that class. Oh, I think that was, oh no, I thought that was calculus 3. But okay, so vector geometry, I guess I took that class. I guess it was so bad that my brain just basically forgot about it. I can't even remember what kind of a class or what kind of grade I got. And then for my 2000 level class, I did multivariable calculus. And then here we have, of course, the core of the mechanical engineering curriculum, which is physics. And then physics 1, physics 2, though physics 2 was more electrical circuits related, which that was the beginning, that was the introduction to electrical circuits, something that I found out later on that I just really did not like. Okay, so now we are done with my community college journey, and then at this point in fall 2010, I went over to Virginia Tech, and that's when I finished my last couple of years. So as we can see here in the first semester, there's a couple of I took approximately 6 classes, and that's a lot, to be honest. Not only, and that was kind of a mistake because I was trying to catch up, but at the same time, I did not think about the workload increase that I was going to have compared to when I was in a community college. And the reason I'm saying this is because when you're in a community college, the workload is definitely less than when you go to a 4-year university. Anybody that is a transfer student is going to tell you this is the case. So I took 6 classes, which was a tall order to fill, and that's why I ended up with a 2.7 GPA. But the classes that I took were, this was electrical theory, the first electrical engineering class, purely electrical engineering class that I took, and I almost bombed it. I got a C+, and honestly, I'm just so grateful that we had a lab, because the lab actually helped me understand a lot of things that I did not get in the theory, which was the class. So very, very grateful for that. And of course, all the TAs, the teacher's assistants that helped me along the way. And my friend also, who was very, very smart with electrical engineering. The next class that I took was Exploration to Engineering Design. And that one was kind of like an annoying class, and I didn't understand its purpose until I actually graduated. This class was very, very tedious, and we had to follow a ton of instructions. Long story short, I definitely understood after I graduated. This class got me used to following instructions and meeting requirements, and that's something that you definitely 100% do when you graduate and become an engineer. So paying attention to detail, definitely learn that from that class. The next class that I took was Intro to Differential Equations. I got a B on that one. The professor was pretty straightforward. She was very nice, and it wasn't really that difficult. I must say that the college that I went to, Virginia Tech, again, it had a tutoring center, which was, if you ever have this, make sure that you do take advantage of it, so that way you don't just try to do every single thing on your own. The next class that I took in my first semester at Virginia Tech was Intro to Thermal Fluids. I got a B- on that one. I was actually very, very excited about taking this class when I was just starting my journey there, because this was the first true engineering class that I took, the first mechanical engineering class. As you can see there, it was ME 2124. Everything else was just like general classes basically. And I was really excited about that class. Put a lot of effort into it. I got B-, but whatever. And then another very, very difficult class that I took, which involved a lot of chemistry and a lot of like atoms, molecules, was material science, engineering, elements of materials engineering. That was basically a material science class. And yeah, kudos to all the material scientists. A lot of the times we forget about them. Funny story, a couple of days ago, I was in the gym and I had an engineering t-shirt, and then there was a material scientist down there who said, "Oh, you're an engineer, huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a mechanical engineer." He's like, "Oh, cool, I'm a material scientist." And then he was saying that's the forgotten the forgotten engineering field. And I mean, he's kind of right. Sometimes you forget that there's material science and engineering. The next class that I took my first semester was statistics. And then I ended up with a 2.72 GPA, which made it a little difficult to get internships or co-ops or anything else coming my way. So that actually got me a little worried. I was thinking, how am I going to get an internship and whatnot? But I took a summer class, and I took systems dynamics. As you can see, I got a B+. And this is when things actually started to look up when it comes to my GPA. If you are someone that has a crappy GPA and you know that it can affect you and you have no experience whatsoever, if you have a free summer, you don't have anything to do other than work in a non-engineering related job, retail or whatever, I suggest that you take some classes just to raise up your GPA. A lot of the times they're quick, they're fast, and the pain is over before you know it. So that raised my GPA to a 2.81, closer to a 3. My goal was a 3 because a lot of internships and a lot of co-ops, the threshold, the minimum GPA was a 3. So I was really, really looking forward and aiming to get that 3.0. So we continue with my second, or actually technically my third semester at Virginia Tech. Academic standing good. This was the fall semester of 2010. I took my second electrical engineering class, industrial electronics. That one was a really hard class, although I must say that it was a little easier than the first electrical engineering class. I ended up getting a B-. That's when you start learning about gates, NAND, AND gates, NOR gates, OR gates, and things like that, digitals, binary stuff. And then I took the next class was actually, this was a very exciting semester as well, because this was the first time I started taking mostly just mechanical engineering classes. This is when I started basically just honing in and focusing on my mechanical engineering degree, technically speaking. So then we have mechanical engineering, thermodynamics. Thermo was you basically study the concepts of energy balance, the first law of thermodynamics. It was a shocker. There were some things that I understood, some I didn't. I ended up getting a B-, not too bad. And then another class that I took was fluid mechanics. Fluid mechanics, the professor was he was very good at keeping the class engaged, and the tests themselves weren't too crazy difficult per se. They were a lot like the homework, which really does help a lot if you ever experience something like that. That goes to show that the professor also does make a huge difference, which actually brings me to my next point here with mechanical engineering, mechanical design number 1. This is kind of when you start thinking more in terms of the way I like to look at mechanical design is basically an amplification of statics, dynamics, and deformable bodies. They're basically all those classes in one and on steroids. That's the way I see mechanical design anyways. A lot of physics in there. I ended up withdrawing this class because towards the middle of the semester, almost I wasn't doing too hot. I was messing up all the tests, so I ended up dropping it. I ended up taking only 9 credits as a class that semester, but it's whatever. So because of that, my GPA kept going up. I went from a 2.7, 2.8. Now I'm at a 2.9. I'm only 0.08 points away from that 3.0. So that was my goal. My goal was to getting a 3.0 to be eligible for a lot of those jobs, and I was already looking forward to graduation and thinking, man, I need to have a 3.0 in order to be eligible for a lot of jobs upon graduation. So that was definitely my goal, and I was doing as many things as possible in order to get there. So my third semester or fourth semester of Virginia Tech, technically it was spring semester 2011. Here we have, this was an elective, finance, survey on investments. That was a pretty easy class, as you can imagine. From an engineering perspective, they taught a lot about investments and the market, the S&P 500, how to really make long-term investments. And the bottom line was, whenever you want to invest your money, just think long-term. That was my main takeaway from that class. And then, of course, we have a bunch of other core mechanical engineering classes, as it is the case for heat and mass transfer. There was a lot of geometry in this class, and if you've ever taken it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But there's a lot of geometry, a lot of surface areas, and then I thought that I was good at it up until I took quizzes and exams, and I realized that I bumped a lot of them. But anyway, I ended up getting a C. The next class that we have here is dynamic systems vibrations. This was kind of a rough class, to be honest. A bunch of math, a ton of math, and a lot of calculus-based, differential equations-based. As far as I remember, I may be wrong, but definitely a lot of math involved here in vibrations. The professor was pretty cool, though. And then here, I retook mechanical engineering, mechanical design 1, and I ended up getting a B. That goes to show how the professor really does matter. And Professor Curtis Stern, I still remember him because he was so good. Curtis Stern, man, he was one of the most patient people or professors that I ever had, and I wish a lot of professors were like him. He would bring a bunch of pieces of machine and car lifters, jacks, so that he could show us exactly how things work and how bolts work and things like that. So he was very smart and very engaging. The next class that I took that semester was mechanical engineering lab. I don't even know. Oh, this was my first senior class. Technically my first senior semester, huh? My first senior year, basically. And then a mechanical engineering lab, and then getting a B. And that one, I think you focus more, if I remember correctly, you focus more on technical writing and running your own projects, physical projects. You start using a lot of simulations, and you start putting a lot of the things that you learn in your theoretical classes, you start putting them more, and you start applying everything. It's applied engineering, basically. That's the way I saw it. And you write a report and then you present it. So then the next, this is an undergraduate research class, something that I talked about in the channel a couple of times. If you have no experience whatsoever, and you don't have an internship, undergraduate research is perhaps one of the most powerful weapons that you can use in order to give yourself a little bit of experience in your resume. So make sure that you take advantage of that if your professor or if your college offers it. Go to the school catalog, go to undergraduate research. I ended up getting an E- on that one, but I definitely learned to work with other graduate students, the design process, and it was a more of an applied engineering setting when you start brainstorming and you start coming up with potential design solutions. And so very insightful for sure. So this was a big semester, guys, because I did very well. I got a 3.2. That 3.2 was pretty solid for me. And then this is what brought me to above a 3.0, and I did not stop marketing that 3.04 to all the internships and co-ops that I was applying to, because I finally was above the threshold for a lot of companies' opportunities. So this technically brings me to a couple of last semesters here that I'm going to go over very quickly. I took this is an elective class, which was this was biosystems engineering. I don't know, I can't remember. But anyway, so I took power engines, power and transmissions. When you start learning basically about internal combustion engines, transmissions, and things like that. I wanted to be more of an automotive engineer back then, and so I took that class just for the sake of not only, of course, increasing my automotive engineering background, but also because I thought that this would help me get a job in the automotive industry. I was between automotive and aerospace. I wanted to focus more on that. As you guys may or may not already know, none of them ended up working out. Anyway, so we move on here. In this one, engineering, design, and economics. This was actually kind of a lot of design processes. You start going through preliminary design, detailed design. You basically just go through the regular engineering design process, and then you start applying. It's more of a real world application of a lot of concepts in engineering. You start talking about budgets, schedule. You start learning about the Gantt chart. I was supposed to be taking this class when I was a sophomore, as you can see here, 2000 level class, but I ended up taking it as a senior. And then this is the second mechanical engineering lab. This is actually when you start presenting, not only writing reports, but also presenting your reports to, or your work to, an audience. You go through the whole theoretical part, you start gathering data, and then you use your data acquisition system, you start using your analysis, and you put all that data in one huge report, and then you turn it in, and then you present it. So pretty similar, or very close to what really happens in the real world. And then we have my engineering, design, and project. This was actually my senior capstone design. We focused on aircraft crashworthiness, which if you guys don't remember, Back in 2009, I believe, there was a plane that landed on water on the Hudson River in New Jersey, New Jersey. And so our purpose as a team was to basically create a structure that could withstand landing on the water, and also not only that, but also be able to provide the pilot on an emergency landing the right instructions and the specifications to be able to make that landing perfect every single time, not just make it dependent on the pilot's experience and skill level. So that was a really good one, very, very insightful. And then another one, took this one. This was another required class, fluid systems. So this was a lot of simulation, and then you start using a lot of software here to start working on a lot of heat transfer, to start designing, for example, just air conditioning systems or heat exchangers. So that was basically what that class was, a lot of CAD and a lot of calculations. It was pretty straightforward now that I think about it, but it was hard at that time because you had to look at the formulas and figure out certain parameters that you had to modify in order to meet certain requirements and the specifications the professor will give you. So very, very applied and very close to what happens in the real world for sure. And then I took music appreciation just for shits and giggles because I wanted to increase my GPA, and that was one of the easiest classes that I could find. As you can tell, I can't believe I ended up getting a B+, but hey, it is what it is. At this point, I increased my GPA by 0.02. So here, as you guys can see the trend, I went from a 2.7 to a 2.8 to a 2.9 to a 3.02. Now I'm at a 3.06. And this brings us to my last semester at Virginia Tech. And here I took a bunch of classes just so that to get it all over with. I took a bunch of, let's see. So this was a photography class. Very, very straightforward. I passed it, no worries there. And then I took fluid flows in nature, which was an aerospace engineering class. A lot of aerodynamics and fluid mechanics. It was actually a little harder than I expected, but it was still a pretty straightforward class. So I got an A- on that, and then I took, what was this? Fundamentals. Oh, okay. So this is the class that I took in order to prepare for the Fundamentals of Engineering exam, which I took and I passed back in 2012. So if you're someone that is interested in practicing, if you're a junior, practicing for the Fundamentals of Engineering exam, you can take a class. I think that your college most likely provides a class like this. There's no grade for that. You just take a 2-credit class, no big deal. I ended up not even using much of what happened here, so it was kind of like whatever. I just took a bunch of exam preparations from the website for the Fundamentals of Engineering exam itself. A couple of last classes here. I took HTM, which was an elective, pretty easy there. Hotel management, tourism, no big deal. And then manufacturing. This was a fun class. Industrial systems engineering. It was basically a lab, and it was pretty straightforward. It was pretty easy, and it was a lot of hands-on. You learn about milling, you learn about drilling, you learn about machining, welding. So that was actually pretty cool. I really liked it a lot. You go to a machine shop, and then you start using a lot of the machines that they have there. So you start learning a lot about safety and different machining processes and things like that. So that was a very, very fun class. This brings me to my second semester of my senior design project, my capstone. I already told you guys what that is. I ended up getting an A on that one. At the end of the day, we did not have a full design for what we intended to do originally, but I mean, it is what it is. Usually what happens is the next group will basically take over your research, and they'll move on from there. So then the last 2 classes that I took was sustainable energy solutions. This is when I learned a little bit more about nuclear power. I started learning about sustainable energy. So that was a past class, pretty straightforward, not too bad there. And then the last class that I took was land vehicle dynamics. As I mentioned, I wanted to get in the automotive industry, so that was an elective that I took. So I ended up getting a B. But the one thing I wanted to say is that if you are someone that is interested in getting in aerospace, if this is when it's your time to start taking these electives and make them more relevant to the type of field where you want to get into, and of course also market them and put them on your resume, and make sure that you mention them when you apply to jobs where you would like to work. So this actually brought me to a grand total cumulative GPA of 3.15. That put me above the threshold requirements for a lot of jobs, and at that point I was very, very lucky and fortunate And not only lucky and fortunate, but also I worked my ass off to put myself out there and apply to a bunch of internships. And so I ended up getting a job. Before I graduated, I was very fortunate to have a job. So that's basically my whole mechanical engineering journey. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you want to know more about what happened in my first job as a mechanical engineer, my entry-level mechanical engineering experience, go watch this video right here where I tell you everything that you need to know. Thank you guys for watching. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you on the next one. Peace!